Hello, hello, hello everyone, and yes, it is just slightly later. I just took a shower, and now I'm doing another tier maker video. So this time we're going to be covering the SaGa series. Now, there's lots of these games. Obviously, I wasn't able to play through every single game. You can see the ones on the bottom that I did. Boy, these are not in order, are they? Oh, no, they're in order. Okay, good. So, the SaGa series started on the Game Boy, where the first three games were released here as Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3. The next three were on the Super Famicom, but never came out in America. They are Romancing Saga 1, 2, and 3. Then there was SaGa Frontier 1 and 2 for the PlayStation, Unlimited Saga for PlayStation 2, and SaGa Scarlet Grace for the Vita. Now, I wasn't able to do all of these. I never really planned on doing Scarlet Grace because I can't really stream anything from the Vita, and I didn't want to necessarily spring for buying the Steam version of a game that I wasn't sure if I was going to be into. Also, I didn't play Unlimited Saga or SaGa Frontier 2. Unlimited Saga, I know, is bad. Like, even fans of the series say, wow, yeah, this one kind of blows, you know. It would probably be an F-tier game, but I had a thought to maybe just play it like for one stream, as sort of like this is this crappy game like I did with Dawn of Mana, but I never did it, you know. Also did not play SaGa Frontier 2, and I'll get into the whys later. Now, a lot of these do have remakes or remasters. I tried to play the original versions when possible, but in this case, I was not able to do that exactly, because Romancing Saga 1, I was able to play on the Super Nintendo with a translation patch. That was fine, but then 2 and 3 did not have complete translation patches. They only had incomplete ones, so I actually played them on Steam. My good friend EB Agent gifted them to me during a sale, and I was able to play those. So let's talk about, in case you guys haven't seen the last video on how I do this, I don't necessarily have to use all of these tiers. It's sort of like whatever I feel they belong to, and I'm not comparing them necessarily to each other or to games on their same system, but as video games as a whole. So to be an S-tier game, it has to be like a masterpiece of gaming. To be an F-tier game, it has to be absolute trash. To sort of explain how I'd rank each is, if somebody asks me, hey, you played this game, should I get it? S-tier is an absolutely, why haven't you gotten it yet, get it now. A-tier is, yes, absolutely, you should get it as soon as you can. A B-tier is, yes, it was a good game, I would recommend it. A C-tier is, get it while it's on sale. A D-tier is, I didn't like it, but you might find something interesting in it. You might want to try before you buy. And an F-tier is, avoid at all costs. So, that being said, let's get into this. So, okay, so Final Fantasy Legend, I actually had this game as a kid, and I played through it so many times. I'm just going to say that this one's kind of tough to place. To be honest with you, I have to sort of take off the nostalgia goggles, you know, and say that Final Fantasy Legend really belongs right here in the C tier. And I think that, like, as much as I loved it as a kid, and as much as I loved streaming it for you guys and enjoyed playing it, there are a lot of issues. So first, go over the good. The soundtrack is good. It's got an interesting premise and story, although it's not translated all that well. You know, early Game Boy games. And it's fun. There's a lot of different ways that you can play it. You can have a party of humans, mutants, or monsters, and they all sort of play differently. Any combination you want. You can, if you don't like the way a character is working out, you can dismiss them from your party and recruit a new character. There's a lot of room for experimentation. Playing as the monsters is a lot of fun because it's almost like a prototypical version of Pokemon where they evolve and such. The graphics are pretty good for when it came out, very early Game Boy. So considering when it came out, the graphics are pretty good. That being said, there's like some issues with the game system in general. Like human characters can only become more powerful by either wearing better equipment or by buying potions to increase stats. The problem is, if you increase all of your stats to 99, you're still not nearly powerful enough to beat the game as a human. So The issue is that the actual limit is not 99 as displayed, but 255, which you keep increasing by continuing to feed them potions, but it doesn't show you, so you really have to keep track of, what your actual stats are, which is kind of like a mess. And you can actually overflow. Like if you have 254 and then you get a +2 strength potion and you use it, you're gonna overflow and you're gonna have 1 strength. That actually happened to me in my playthrough, even though I was aware of it, because I accidentally equipped armor that gave me +10 strength, and suddenly I was doing like no damage, and I had to remove that armor. So, issues like that. The last boss is ridiculously hard. Even with a fully maxed out party, it is difficult. There are exploits you could use to kill him in one shot, or you can just throw yourself at him until you beat him legitimately. Beating him legitimately, the first time I ever did it was on stream, and that was really cool, but games with issues like this can't be any higher than C tier, I think. It's a decent game with a lot of like really crippling flaws. Okay, so Final Fantasy Legend 2, I'm going to go ahead and... God, I'm going to get roasted for this, but I'm going to go ahead and put it right here in the C tier as well. And the reason is, okay, so Final Fantasy Legend 2 is like an improvement in just about every way. Like the graphics are better, the story's better, the music is way better. Like the music is amazing, but this game is so hard. I got to what I thought was the last boss, was just this guy Apollo, and I couldn't beat him. And I had been just ripping through everything in the final dungeon and all the areas before it. Like nothing was able to stand against me. I was so powerful. And then I got this guy who was just ridiculously powerful, and I couldn't beat him. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't do it. And I learned later that he dies on his own if you like just survive long enough, which is a crazy thing, and that he's not the last boss. We wound up watching the rest of, the last dungeon and true final boss on a YouTube video on stream just to see the ending, and it turns out that like basically you need very specific weapons that can pierce through enemies' defenses. Otherwise, you just don't stand a chance against the last 2 bosses, and the game never tells you this. So if you don't have those specific weapons, you're pretty much just, up shit's creek. So that to me left a bad taste in my mouth, and I can't really... A game that I'm just like not able to get all the way through, I can't really put it any higher than C tier. Just because like I tried really hard and I wasn't able to. So yeah, that's... I mean, I could, but I won't in this case. There is one that I didn't technically finish that I'm going to put a little higher. Okay, so Final Fantasy Legend 3, I'm going to say is a B tier game. This is actually the one that a lot of people who are really big fans of the SaGa series don't like as much as 2, because out of all the SaGa series, it is the least like a SaGa game and the most like a Final Fantasy game, where it has experience points, it has levels. These are things that are generally not found in these games at all. But I really enjoyed it. Now, the music is not as good as Final Fantasy Legend 3, but the story was great. I enjoyed the gameplay. It had time travel, which I always enjoy. You get to travel to a past and a future. You can do all sorts of crazy things. It's very open in letting you play it the way you want to play it, instead of forcing you to play it a specific way, like certain games do. And, like any way that you choose to play it is pretty viable. I had a lot of fun. The only thing that stops it from being any higher is it's just, not translated all that well. It is like a typical Game Boy game. Like, it's good, but it's not like amazing. You know what I mean? So that's Final Fantasy Legend 3. Okay, so Romancing Saga. I did a review of this, and Romancing Saga, this is a tough one, but I'm going to go ahead and put this here in the B tier. It's almost A tier. As a matter of fact, if I'm going to order these where like the better ones are to the left, I'm going to move this here and I'm going to move this here. So, yeah, Romancing Saga is a game that when it's really, so there's moments where it's good and there's moments where it's bad. And the moments where it's good are really, really good, and the moments where it's bad are really, really bad. It's a game of extremes. And basically what it comes down to is it's so experimental and weird that it kind of stumbles over itself at times. It's a completely open world game, which on the SNES is really crazy. The only thing preventing you from going to an area is not knowing its location. Once you have learned of an area's location from another character, or you have recruited a character that knows of that location, you will have that available on your map, and you can just kind of go wherever you want. That being said, you're not giving a whole lot of direction as to what you're actually supposed to do. You mostly just go to places and do quests and become more powerful and eventually uncover, you know, the whole thing about Sauron, the evil god and everything. But yeah, like basically this is a game that when I was frustrated because I couldn't recruit any characters because I couldn't find them because they move around the map randomly, or I was stuck with no quest to do because I didn't have characters to show me new areas, and I was just bouncing back and forth between a few areas, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a character to show up. And then when it falls into place, it's amazing. It's so fun. The gameplay is great. The bosses are fun to fight. It's a brutal game. This is a game where you can run into a boss as your like second or third encounter. Everything is so random. But you know, if you run into an enemy on the map and it turns out to be something way beyond you, you could easily just back away and re-engage the same enemy, and it's randomized to something else. So, you know, it's experimental and weird, but I had a lot of fun with the parts that were good. So that's where I'd put Romancing Saga. Okay, Romancing Saga 2, which I played on Steam. We're just going to put this right here in the F tier. Romancing Saga tier is hot garbage. I hated this game, and I saw that it had mixed reviews on Steam, but like I didn't think it would be this bad. And to put it simply, this is a game that tries to do everything. It's so weird and experimental, so much more so than Romancing Saga 1, that it doesn't do anything particularly well. It tries to, you know, be open world, but at the same time, there's a whole management sim aspect to it where you're trying to grow an empire, and there's a generational aspect to it, kind of like Fire Emblem games sometimes do. And it's all really good on paper, but none of it is implemented well. The game is brutally difficult, and if you grind, the game actually gets way more difficult because the more battles you fight, the harder the enemies become. But if you don't fight enough battles, you won't gain stats, you won't glimmer skills, you're going to be weak. So you can either try to level up a little bit and just find that perfect balance. Characters can die permanently in this, which was true in Final Fantasy Legend as well. But in this, it's really, really brutal in the sense that you have no way of protecting your characters from powerful enemies early on. You can't run from most battles. Somebody came into the stream and said, so I see you're playing this bullshit-ass game. And I was like, yeah, that's about right. I was only able to get through like 2.5 streams or so before I said, I can't stand this game. This game sucks. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so Romancing Saga 3 this is a tough one to place. But I think I definitely want to put it in the B tier. I didn't finish this game, so I'm tempted to put it down here, but I think it's a step above, and I'm actually going to put it right over here. Romancing Saga 3 is really, really good. Like, it does everything that 1 did right and the few things that 2 did right, and gets rid of everything that they did wrong. It's so much better. Like, everything about it is a vast improvement. The only thing that stops it from being really good, and the reason I didn't finish it, is because kind of like Final Fantasy Legend 2, it's easy, 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 easy. You're becoming more powerful, and then you run into a wall. And this happened a few times, and so what I did is that between streams, I would do a lot of heavy grinding. I would just put on a podcast or an album or something and just grind away. And it got to the point where I basically could not get more powerful. My stats were really high, my weapon skills were really high, I was just one-shotting all enemies and most boss creatures at this point. And then I went to the end and couldn't really progress in the final dungeon. The last few bosses were too difficult. I did try to fight the last boss, and he basically handed me my ass. And it reminded me a little bit of the experience I had with Octopath Traveler, where it was a wonderful game with a lot of sharp difficulty spikes that you would have to grind to overcome. But then even when you feel like you're at the maximum potential and you can't possibly get more powerful, the last boss is still like kind of, takes you apart, because you are expected to build your characters in very specific ways. And if you don't do that exactly the way the game expects you to do it, you're not going to have a good time, which is not good when you're playing a game that allows you to build your characters any way you want. When you give players that kind of freedom, you have to balance it so that most player builds are going to be at least somewhat viable. Maybe some would be a little harder to play with than others, but there's no reason why only one type of player build is going to work. So that's, yeah. So as you can see, I'm not a biggest fan of the SaGa series. So the last one that I'm going to talk about here is SaGa Frontier on the PlayStation, and this one's really interesting. This recently just got a remaster, which was actually announced shortly before we were going to start playing Romancing Saga. And this is one of those games that, well, let me put it to you this way. The first time I heard about Romancing Saga was back in the day. Final Fantasy VII had been out for a little while, and Final Fantasy VII was a gigantic hit for Square, and also a gigantic hit for the PlayStation. And everybody was sort of like waiting for like the next thing from Square. You know what I mean? And then they announced their new game, SaGa Frontier. And, you'd see pictures of it. It looked interesting. And they were really, like saying, boom, 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 SaGa Frontier. This is going to be the next thing. This is the next thing after Final Fantasy VII. And I remember reading a magazine where it got like an insanely poor review. It was like, I think it was like Next Generation. They gave it 1 star out of 5. And it was like, is this a joke? Was basically the tone of the review. Like, is this game somebody's idea of a joke? And I remember I would hear people who liked the game, but that kept sticking in my mind, that there was this one person that just really fucking hated it, right? Like, is this a joke or something? Like, what the hell is this? And I thought, well, maybe he's just not used to the way that SaGa games play. I mean, it was the first one to come out in the United States since Final Fantasy Legend 3, and most people didn't know that those are SaGa games. And as I explained, Legend 3 didn't really play like a SaGa game. It played like a Final Fantasy. So, so SaGa Frontier, I tried it, and man, I feel a lot like that guy from that review. Like, this is, we're going to put it here. It's bad. It's not as bad as Romancing Saga 2, but it's bad. And the fact that this is like, that there's nothing above B tier here, and that I have 2 F tier games, and just like this overall negative feeling that I wasn't even able to get through a whole lot of SaGa Frontier, because like, it was similar in a way to Romancing Saga 2, where I felt like the game itself hates me and is punishing me for playing it. That the more I played it, the more the game fought back against me. And, I play video games for fun, as most people do. I want to have fun. Yeah, I am playing it for a living in a sense that I'm doing, Twitch streams. But at the same time, I want to be having fun. And if I'm not having fun, my chat is not going to be having fun. And I made a decision to just not play SaGa Frontier anymore. And I didn't really feel the need to continue. I was kind of like really tired of SaGa games at this point, and did not want to play SaGa Frontier, which originally I had planned to do. or Unlimited Saga or Scarlet Grace. And I know some people who are really into this series, but it's definitely not for me. So yeah, we decided to just yeet that one right there and call it a day. So no more Saga games for me. I think that the next time a new Saga game comes out, I'm just gonna kindly say, nah, fam, nah. So that's my Saga tier list video there. As for what's next, well, the next series that I'm started right after finishing SaGa Frontier, or finished streaming it at least, because I didn't play very much of it, is Suikoden. But I'm still playing the first game, so once and there's only 5 of them, but so like once I get through Suikoden, maybe I could do something. But I think what I'd like to do is do like an SNK fighters tier list. I haven't played every SNK fighter, but it would be cool to see like to put like the ones that I've played in there, and like all the King of Fighters and everything, and Art of Fighting and all that stuff, and in my project to play all these games and see how it goes. Maybe I'll do that. There's some other things that I can do, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I have fun making it and talking about these games and reminiscing about it. But definitely out of these, ironically, the one that I like the best is Romancing Saga 3, one that I was not able to actually finish. And the one that I like the least is definitely Romancing Saga 2. Well, do I hate Romancing Saga 2 more? Or do I hate SaGa Frontier more? I think that with Romancing Saga 2, I got pissed off a lot and didn't want to play it anymore. Whereas with SaGa Frontier, I was just like, you know what? I can tell this is not going to be a good time. I'm just going to cut it short here before I get to that level of pissed off. So I think that, yes, I might hate SaGa Frontier more, but I got to put it above it because I didn't get to that level of anger. So anyway, I'll see you guys around. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have like a different ordering, or if you want to tell me what you think about these games, I'd love to hear it, but just keep it respectful, of course, because this is my opinion, and my opinion is not your opinion. Your opinion is not my opinion. We all got our own opinions. See you soon.